Welcome. Welcome to the Western New York Women in Tech event. I'm Maura Devlin. I'm the VP of Marketing and PR here at 43 North. I am so excited to see so many people here joining us tonight. And before I go any further, I have to give a big thank you to our partners at TechBuffalo and Buffalo. A couple of weeks ago, or I don't know when, we got together and dreamt up the idea for this program as a way to celebrate women. And we've put together what we think is a really special night for the community. So thank you for joining us. I'm here representing both 43 North and our recruitment arm, Forge Buffalo. So if there's anyone out there that might be here thinking about a new career opportunity, or maybe you're just curious about startups, I strongly encourage you to check out forgebuffalo.com. It is the online destination that connects talent to startups and tech companies here in Western New York that are looking to fill jobs. On a personal note, I'm really excited to be here tonight because I think the fact that we're having this event itself speaks to the progress that we're making as a region. A little story before we get started. Many moons ago, back in 2008, I graduated from college, I came back to Buffalo, and I wanted to get a job here and start my career. I had several conversations, took several interviews, and somewhere along that journey, I met with a gentleman who, not 5 minutes into the conversation, looked at me and said, "You need to get out. You need to leave Buffalo. Quite frankly, there are little opportunities here now. We're in the middle of a recession. It's only going to get worse." Well, I did move away. Lucky for me, the story doesn't end there. Fortunately, I was keeping my eye on things that were going on in Buffalo, and I started to see what was happening here, and I had FOMO, and I ended up making my way back to Buffalo. Flash forward to today, I work at 43 North, and being inside, I can tell you firsthand that we've come a long way since that conversation that I had back in 2008. We have more opportunities, and many of them are tied to the tech and startup ecosystem here in Buffalo. Look around. This was a building that in as recent as 2014, no one saw any use for. It was empty and it could have gotten torn down. Today, nearly every floor is full, and most of them are tech companies. And it's becoming quite literally a tech center of gravity for our community. So I'm here at 43 North, so when the next generations, when my two daughters hit that crossroads in life, if they want to stay in Buffalo, they will have any and every opportunity, career opportunity in front of them to do that. And on top of that, they'll have a vibrant city as their playground right here in Buffalo. And while that man's comment about me having to leave Buffalo wasn't tied to gender, I do think this tech and innovation space is creating more opportunities in our region for women than ever before. Opportunities to get funded, to start a business, to launch a career, to take on a leadership role. We just need more women raising their hand and joining us. Thank you. My hope is that this conversation tonight dispels the notion that tech is a boys-only club, and ultimately that each of you leave here feeling some level of optimism and inspiration that moves you to action. If it's not a job in tech, maybe you'll just find more reasons to come back and visit Seneca One, have lunch here. Because at the end of the day, it all supports what we're doing to build Buffalo's future. So let's get the party going. I'd now like to welcome my friend and colleague, Chief Operating Officer of Invest Buffalo Niagara, Jenna Kavanaugh.
Thanks, Maura. So as Maura said, I'm Jenna Kavanaugh, COO of Invest Buffalo Niagara, and the organization behind Buffalo, the region's talent attraction initiative. And I'm also a very proud TechBuffalo board member. I really, on behalf of Invest, on behalf of 43 North, Forge Buffalo, and TechBuffalo, I really want to say how honored we are that you've chosen to spend this evening with us. And I also want to thank our brilliant panelists that you're going to hear from later for all of their time and energy in this program. So a little housekeeping before we begin. Do you all have these half sheets of paper with questions on them? If you didn't, please raise your hand, ask for a pen, and we have some folks that will pass them on to you. So we are asking you to share some advice with us. You can fill out 2 or 3 at least. If you can fill those out and hang on to them, we're going to get back to those later this evening. So what an amazing turnout. We have tech professionals from over 100 different companies across Western New York registered for this evening. And many students. In fact, students, if you could raise your hands, we would love to see you here in the audience. Awesome. Let's give these students a round of applause. Woo! So this is a fantastic turnout, and it truly makes me appreciate 3 things. The first is the importance of this topic, women in tech. There is no question that women are the minority in the tech industry, from the general workforce through management positions and leadership. A 2020 study showed that the tech industry is only made up of 28.8% of women. And while it's increasing, it's only at a pace that we would achieve parity in about 10 years. And women of color only make up 4%. We can do more, and we can do better, and we can do that here. The second thing is the desire to inspire and to be inspired. Here we are, March 30th. It is the end of Buffalo History Month. We have celebrated International Women's Business Day, but this shouldn't be the end. You know the saying in Buffalo about the weather, in like a lion, out like a lamb? That's fine when you're talking about the weather, but not when you're talking about women in tech. We need to champion this initiative. We need to be bolder, be stronger. We need to be lions and not lambs. In fact, right here, we should be buffaloes. Brave, proud, strong, ever charging forward. So tonight, go out and be buffaloes. And the third thing that this reminds me of is the power of collaboration. Collaboration fosters creativity and innovation. We could do more and achieve more together. This program is put together by Invest, 43 North, TechBuffalo, 3 very different organizations harnessing the power of our board and our very, very talented teams, of whom I'm very appreciative, doing all of this great work. And it also reminds me of that African proverb that probably many of you have heard. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. So let's go together. Let's do more together. In fact, we're going to do something together right now. So we have a little fun activity planned for you this evening, and we need your help to accomplish this. You all have those sheets of paper. Well, tonight, this paper is going to end up in the hands of someone else in this audience. In a minute, I'm going to ask you all to stand up. We're going to turn these into snowballs, and when I give the mark, we're going to throw them at each other. Throw and catch, folks. So stand up. Everybody stand up here with me. Come on. Turn these, just sprinkle them up like this. Put them in the snow. We're going to wrap that up. If you see a piece of paper, take a piece of paper. All right? Woo. All right, woo. All right, we have some softball players out there still going. All right, folks. Woo. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Great job. Great job, everyone. We appreciate you all being involved in this. So you all should have a paper or two. Okay. I hope this leaves you energized. I hope that this kind of gives you inspiration and energy for the rest of this evening. But hang on to those papers. Those papers have value. Those papers are important because they are the words of your neighbor, your community member, the person that you see in the grocery store, the coffee shop, the gym. And this is what this is about. It's about doing things together and being buffaloes. So, without further ado, we're going to go to tonight's main event. I'm going to ask our panelists and our moderator to come up, and I'm going to introduce our moderator, our lawyer, our leader, visionary president and CEO of TechBuffalo, Buffalo Zone, Sarah Tambacucci. Woo!
All right, let's hear it for Jenna and Maura. That is the most energizing start to a panel that I have ever seen. And I am absolutely thrilled to introduce to you tonight this amazing group of women who empower, women who innovate, women who inspire every single day. Thank you for being here. All right. Yes, thank you for being here. All right. Yes, definitely. Settle down, get comfortable. We're going to have a great conversation tonight. So let's have a warm welcome for Courtney Caldwell, the co-founder and chief operating officer of ShearShare. Thank you for being here tonight. Renita DiStefano, the chief information officer of Seneca Resorts and Casinos. Thank you. Yeah. Maura Duggan, the Director of PR, Social, and Communication for ACV. We're so excited to have you. Latoya Gonzalez, an Agile coach for M&T Tech. Welcome. And last, but certainly not least, Molly Hartwig, a Senior Staff Product Launch Manager for Tesla. Thank you for being here. All right, so we are going to spend our time together tonight talking about a lot of things. We're going to talk about navigating a career in tech. We are going to talk about what it means to find your source of motivation. We are going to talk about the evolution of tech in Western New York. But we are also going to ask for your engagement this evening through polling, and of course, hold on to those snowballs because we're going to need them later this evening, and we'll have time for Q&A with this great panel. So that's the plan for this evening, but most importantly, we want this to be conversational. We want this to be fun. And each of you have had such an interesting, unique path to tech. So I want to start things off, Renita, with a pretty simple question. Talk to us about your path into tech, and talk to us why it's so important to be here together tonight.
So my journey in IT started about 25 years ago, and it started, ironically, in a role as a preschool director. And part of that role was to oversee construction of a brand new preschool center. And one of the things that I realized very early on was that we needed a better way to collaborate. And so I literally opened the phone book and I turned to an advertisement in there that kind of called to me. And advertising did its job. And I called the number and I said, hey, can somebody build me a file server? They sent a couple of techs out and showed me how to add a user. Here's a server. Here's how you do backups. Here's how you do permissions, and on and on and on. And so I got my hands on the keyboard, and the first thing I said was, ooh, I like this. And the second thing I said was, why are you telling me this? And they said, because they didn't buy you a support agreement. You are now the proud owner of a Novell 3.0 server. So I just dated myself. Novell's not around anymore. But it was when you find the thing that lights you up, that's what you should do. Try to find a way to get paid to do that. And that's how I got started. And why am I here today? I mean, look around the room. The women in this room, the stories that I've heard from some of the people attending, it's so inspiring to me.
Thank you. And I believe you are also, I think we need to mention, the first female Native American CIO.
Yes.
Thank you.
I really wasn't trying to be the first anything. I was really just trying to make my way in an IT world that, I started with an organization of about 100 technicians, and I was one of a handful of women. And gosh, what a journey it's been. But that's it.
Yeah, wonderful. Maura, if I'm remembering correctly, you spent some time in New York City, you came back to Buffalo, you're with ACV, really exciting, Buffalo's first unicorn. Talk to us about your journey.
Yeah, so I was trying to think about like how to succinctly talk about that, but overall I would say like my career in communications and PR and then getting into tech came from networking, not necessarily events like this, but connections that you're just making with strangers. When I was living in New York, probably like for a lot of people, I was bartending and waitressing and happened to start talking to somebody. And the Buffalo folks here will understand. Two of them happened to be from Buffalo. The one gentleman lived in New York, was the head bartender at a fancy steakhouse, and one of the women, had connections to Buffalo, knew my high school teachers, etc. Anyway, we get to talking. She wants to know what I want to do with my life, and I said I have an English degree. My mom would really like me to have a corporate job. Well, it turns out she had a best friend who was VP of HR at Meredith Corporation, which is a magazine publishing company for Better Homes and Gardens, and just a huge sort of digital content house right now. I landed my first job, rest is history. Anyway, fast forward 10 years, I come back to Buffalo, eventually meet up. I have a friend of a friend who really wants to talk to me about a startup. I'm like, I am not a startup person, I'm consumer. And so anyway, she keeps pushing, and before I know it, I'm the first PR and communications person for ACV. And 2 years later, we're going public, and I'm in the tech industry on this panel. So networking works. Making connections, friends, in a very warm, authentic way. Those things pay off professionally as well as being fulfilling personally.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Courtney, you have been with us in Buffalo. You are a relatively new Buffalo transplant, a couple months, right?
December 30th, we moved into the Seneca One building.
Well, we're so excited you joined our Buffalo community.
I'm still here.
Yeah.
I keep coming back.
Talk to us a little bit about your career path.
Yes. Also, like Maura, in tech startups. And so I think sometimes the best ideas come from problems that you have yourself, right? So I think I kind of tripped into the startup world. My husband and I have owned an award-winning salon back in Dallas, Texas. The cowboy boots. Also, the bigger the hair, the closer to God, we believe in Texas. And so we had a problem at our salon where we could not fill empty seats. It was so strange. The way that stylists were choosing to find professional space to work was changing. We were trying to figure out how to keep up with this, changing trend. And so eventually a stylist calls us and says, hey, I just need to rent your empty suite on a Friday, Saturday. Would you allow me to do that? And I thought that was the strangest thing because stylists do not find professional space to work that way. You're either working by commission or you're signing a long-term booth rental contract. And so she asked to rent by the day. And my husband came home and told me about this random phone call. And I said, are you sure that wasn't like a prank call? Because that sounds so like wild. And he said, no, I talked to her. She was a real person. I think I'm going to give it a try because that empty space is only collecting dust and I'd rather it collect dollars. So let's give it a whirl. And I said, all right, let's try it. Good thing that we did because that stylist did ask us to start doing the same thing in other cities, downtown Dallas and in Austin, Texas and San Antonio, Texas. And then her friends were seeing her online and she was posting everywhere. And they said, no way are you sharing in your commission with each of those salon owners. And no way are you signing contracts at each of those salons. So how the heck are you getting access to this workspace, kind of by the day? She told her friends about us. Some of these stylists still have our personal mobile numbers to this day. And for 3 years, we were literally matching stylists to salon space in cities all over the country. And finally, my husband said, okay, this started to feel like a full-time job. Like, let's go find the app that does what we do. So the next time somebody calls, we can just kind of point them in the right direction. And the app didn't exist. And so that's when we looked at each other and said, we need to build it. And so here we are. SheerShare now has listings in over 900 cities, and we're working to keep small businesses open, all with the tech layer.
Which is amazing. Yeah. And hopefully, half of your team is now Buffalo-based.
Yes. Half of our team is on the 24th floor.
Amazing. Wonderful. Latoya, you have spent a lot of time at M&T Tech, and you have a really exciting title, Agile Coach. Talk to us a little bit about your journey.
I started off going to school, actually a biology major. I fancied myself becoming a pediatrician, ran into organic chem and realized I might need to rethink that. So it took me back to a space where my high school teacher, Mr. Burrell, taught us Pascal programming, and I decided that I wanted to see exactly if I could make a career out of this. I took my first job doing tech support for Corel Word Perfect. It was great. I learned a lot about troubleshooting and being curious and learning, expanding about technology. It taught me a lot of troubleshooting. It taught me to just dig a little deeper into tech. And I have grown my career since then. So I've done a lot of different things from server administration to virtualization to containers and explored, and then came to M&T Bank, and we were on our journey for agility and fell in love with that and grew into a career where I'm an agile coach, where I'm actually taking all those years of technical experiences and helping teams when it comes to, innovation, creativity, and high performance for their teams.
Yeah, so wonderful. And Molly, you've been with Tesla. I know you've spent time in Buffalo. You've spent time in Reno, back to Buffalo. Talk to us about your career path.
Yeah, so my path starts a little bit further back. My dad was a diesel mechanic and my mom was a technician. And so from a very young age, I was watching my dad kind of fix motors and fix things, and seeing my mom go in and do this very technical work, and was exposed very young to the tech world, not quite understanding what tech was, but then decided to go to RIT for mechanical engineering. Got into the advanced manufacturing ecosystem in Buffalo, and had the awesome opportunity to join the Tesla team about 4 years ago. Spent my first 3 years, 2 in Buffalo leading the manufacturing operations here for the energy products, and then got the opportunity to go to Reno for a year and lead the energy products manufacturing in Reno. I've since transitioned to a new role in Buffalo with the team that does charging for global charging for Tesla vehicles, and I'm helping lead product launch. So a bit of a change from the ops world into product launch and the business side of things, but super exciting nonetheless.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. So as you can see, we have backgrounds in engineering, preschool teaching, bartending, biology major. The path varies. It really varies. So Renita, spend a little bit of time telling us, in your role within Seneca Casino, in the role as the CIO, how have you seen the tech industry evolve over time?
Sure. So I've been doing this, as I mentioned, for about 25 years. And, technology has changed at a pace that is just so unprecedented. We now have the compute power of things that used to launch space shuttles, right, in the hands of every single human practically on the face of the earth. But technology aside, the thing that's most important or most impressive to me is the face of IT, literally the face of IT. 25 years ago when I started this, nobody looked like me. There weren't very many women. There was like 2 in our department, and the other one, I saw her at the Christmas party, right? She was outsourced to somewhere else, so I didn't really have a buddy, if you will, somebody to, network with, to, share our stories with. That has changed. Look around the boardroom, you look around the conference table, you look at this room, right? Look at this room. First of all, give yourselves a hand for being here today, right? And if you were on the fence about getting into technology, or if you were on the fence about, going for that promotion, if you're just interested in technology, period, congratulations for being here. And that's the movement that's going on. That's what I've seen change over 25 years. Unprecedented diversity.
Yeah, which is certainly a change. LaToya, you ran through a series of different steps in your career. What has evolution looked like from your perspective in the tech industry? And talk to us a little bit about the agility journey that you've experienced.
Oh, man. I have to echo some of what Renita says, is just the evolution of technology and even the advancement of like what the internet has brought to us and the concepts of mobility and just what we think are traditional computing is changing even now. Like you think about what we're doing with data analytics and then the AI with virtual reality, all these things are changing. And just as much as technology is changing, we need to look at who is in technology, and that needs to change as well. In terms of agility, I think that Agile creates this space where it impacts and amplifies diversity. We talk about psychological safety, and basically what that is with our teams is we're respecting and honoring different voices, your diversity, what you bring, your authentic self, your experiences to the table to help us build out these creative and innovative solutions that we're building out here for M&T Bank, for our customers, for everybody that's sitting in here who's a customer of M&T Bank or will be a customer of M&T Bank. But that's a part of diversity. That's about building these safe spaces. And that includes everyone's voices and their thoughts and their ideals contributing to that space. And I believe that what really truly represents technology right now, right? It's not just a single voice. It's a collection of voices building out these new and grand ideals.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
You think now there literally feels like there's an app for everything. If I can find the app that washes windows and toilets, I would love that. So if anyone knows, just, Courtney at shearshare.com. But the way that I've seen tech change, and again, we kind of fell into tech by accident because we were just solving our own problem, is that it used to be when you thought about I'm getting into tech or breaking into technology, that meant that you were a coder, you were a software engineer, right? And I think people now are starting to realize, because they have these models of hope, like the people on the stage and the people in the audience today, and they say, oh, I can take something that I love that may be outside of the tech industry and put those two things together and still be able to work in my passion. Like, who thought about beauty and technology and us creating Airbnb? I mean, no one has ever thought about that until we pioneered it. And so I love the fact that kids now have examples where it used to just be thinking about, Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg. They now think about Renita and Mara and LaToya and, oh my God, Molly, thank you. They have these examples where I can look at someone and I can see myself. And so if there's an opportunity for me to step into tech, I don't have to do it by way of being an engineer. And so that's definitely a shift I've seen.
That's really well said. And I think the reason events like this are so important is because you can see yourself in the opportunity,
Right.
because you can't imagine it if you can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, LaToya, to your point, creating safe spaces where we work in tech and tech-enabled companies is so important. And I know from our prior conversations, you all have navigated your share of challenges and obstacles when it came to carving out your career. And I think it's something that we should address head on with the audience. So we have our first polling question of the evening. So, the evolution of tech is fascinating, but we all know in navigating our careers, be it your career or honestly, even as a student, you run up against obstacles and challenges. So if we flip to the next slide here, we're going to ask each of you to get out your phones. So you can either scan the image that is up here, or you can go to menti.com, so MENTI.com, and type in the code 32491237. So menti.com, MENTI.com. You'll see the question. Type in the code 32491237. So we want to understand, from your experiences, what obstacle or challenge have you faced as you pursued a career in tech? So we'll give folks a few minutes to answer this. And actually, I'll turn to the panel. If you guys want to share, Maura, maybe there's a story that you can share while we're waiting for this to be filled out. What kind of obstacle have you navigated?
I would say a couple. One would just be sort of what you and Courtney had talked about. A couple years ago, particularly in Buffalo, it kind of felt a little bit inaccessible for the tech community. I didn't really know what an incubator was, right, where to go to connect. It just kind of felt like not very open. And then I would say as technology was kind of being democratized and more mainstream, that is certainly making it more welcome. And then the other thing, I just saw self-doubt in here. I am an English major. I went to a liberal arts college. I was like, what are you talking about here? But sort of embrace, like, the understanding and or not even understanding, just the welcoming nature of ACV, and like, these folks the engineers, the coders, the data folks are so passionate about what they're doing that it's not even teaching, they just want to share it and talk about it. And if you're going to ask questions, they're even happier. So like, you get to learn, but it doesn't feel necessarily academic. So I would say sort of getting rid of that self-doubt and being uncomfortable asking questions, and just like embrace being a student again. I've loved sort of that piece of learning.
Maura, thank you for sharing. And as you've been sharing that, if you guys are taking a look at the screen behind you, we see these responses coming up in real time. So I'm going to just read through some of these challenges: gender bias, self-doubt, being the only woman in the room, not knowing where to start. How do you make sure your own voice is heard? Being my own worst enemy, accessing the people that have the information that you need. We see a lot of common themes coming up. I appreciate you all sharing. Not enough female sponsors. Finding an easy way to improve and develop new skills and keeping current. So, I mean, there's a lot here, and this is really representative of what you all are facing and encountering on a daily basis. So thank you for sharing. I'll turn it over to the panel. What's resonating with you up here? What experiences can you relate to?
Ooh, that lack of...
I'll go.
Yeah, go ahead.
So for me, one of them has been, having street cred, right? Credibility in kind of a man's world and technology. And I'll share maybe not a mistake, but maybe a direction that I took that wasn't so healthy, which is I tried to overcompensate. You go to my LinkedIn profile, you'll see alphabet soup, MBA, CISSP, CISM, CISA, CRIS. It goes on, right? I tried to overcompensate to get street cred by having all of these credentials after my name so that I could prove that I knew that I was talking about in the room. So that maybe wasn't so healthy to maybe to take that direction. But again, credibility is really, really tough. I've had my share of folks say to me, "Hey, honey, can you connect me with one of the guys, one of the techs?" And I just said to myself, "I am one of the techs, right?" And but again, go at it in a healthy way, which is mentor with. That's why we're doing this event.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like the lack of diversity definitely stuck out to me. As Maura mentioned, it kind of felt like, getting into tech is like a hidden door, and not everybody was shown the breadcrumbs. So I'm on what I consider to be the best and the saddest list, which is I am the 33rd African-American female to raise over $1 million in VC funds, which is crazy. And that was in 2018. I think today we have just reached over 100 Black women. So to put that in perspective, for every non-melanated male, white male, who raises $1 million, Black female receives $2,700, right? But are expected to provide the same kind of results and drive for greatness. And so I remember the very first conversation that Ty and I had with an investor. We walk into a room, about to pop open our laptop, and immediately the man makes a comment about our race. And I'm just like, okay, I'm from Texas, right? I present as a Black woman every time I leave my house, but I thought that Silicon Valley was like a meritocracy. And so I didn't expect that. And so what do you do in those situations? Do you just leave the room? Do you, yell an obscenity and say, forget you? And so that was like an aha moment for me. It's like things will be the same, but they can be different. And so we just continue to forge ahead. It took over 100 meetings for us to get our very first yes from an investor. And every time you have to walk into the 101st room with the same amount of excitement and the same amount of zeal, knowing that you're about to change the world and try to help the other person on the other side understand that. And so, that definitely the lack of diversity hits a little bit very close to home.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
The other thing we see coming up here a bit in themes: self-doubt, imposter syndrome, scared to fail. Molly, talk to us a little bit about your experience in this space.
Yeah, I think honestly, it kind of partners with another one that I've seen up there. That's the "you're too young." So I'm, relatively early in my career, 10 years experience, and imposter syndrome is real, right? You're in that conference room and you know what you're talking about, but you will self-doubt the minute somebody questions. So I think just being confident in the truths that you know, and being willing to be vulnerable, right? And standing up to that. There's no easy answer because I think it affects all of us. But yeah, I think that one's a big one for me.
Yeah.
I think you also have to have a community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You have to have a community to help you, people who can rally behind you no matter what. I mean, I have been so blessed in life to have a great community behind me, behind my entire career, and listens to me when I'm talking about self-doubts or frustrated about having to continually keep going back to the table or reiterate the same thing I said, or somebody takes my ideals off as their own, right? And it's like that community and that support helps you drive forward. It is not easy and things are getting better, maybe not as much as we would like to see, but you have to be persistent and you have to keep moving forward, and having that good group of people behind you and supporting you makes all the difference.
Do therapists count?
Therapists do count.
The other question that comes up a lot, I think, is as you're navigating these professional challenges, how do you strike work-life balance? Or what is that balance between the professional and the personal? And in some instances, we're hearing now in a post-COVID world that it's not balance, it's work-life integration. And what does that mean? So Maura, I'd love, when you hear the phrase work-life balance, what do you think about? What does it mean to you?
Well, when I was thinking about this, it used to be, and I don't know if it was before COVID or just sort of a couple of years ago, I thought it was balance in that it had to be the exact opposite. So you went from being incredibly busy and you rested and recharged and, didn't have to socialize or didn't have to do that. But I didn't necessarily find that super helpful or fulfilling either. And what I've kind of found is even still keeping busy doesn't necessarily mean draining or not fulfilling or sort of not energizing you. It just maybe means finding a different outlet. So, for example, I actually have a second job, and I ended up getting pretty passionate about Reform Fitness, which is here in Buffalo, and it's sort of it's called Legree Fitness, but it's like Pilates. But anyway, I was so passionate about it, I decided to start teaching there 5 years ago. I was one of her first instructors, and I just find it so emotional or mentally gratifying. It's social. You're meeting different people who have nothing to do with this, startup, recently public way of life. And I find that a way to recharge. And it's just this other distraction, hobby, just help that I just sort of think addresses another part of your brain, your mental health. And so just kind of thinking about what are those things that might kind of recharge you. And it doesn't have to be sort of the rest or meditation. Maybe some people do like to be on the go. And I think too, it goes back to community, because that's sort of why I'm so drawn to it. It's the clients who come in, it's my fellow coworkers with this shared interest that are kind of building you up. So I would say, kind of finding fulfillment elsewhere.
Well, I want to thank the audience for this participation. There's a lot of vulnerable sharing up here, and I think it's really important to catalog these experiences and to also know that many of us have had our own version of that experience as we've navigated. So I just want to thank you all for participating. Put our hands together for some of the feedback you see up here. So we're going to transition a bit to talk about Western New York. We know that Western New York, a lot of us here are so proud to call Western New York home. We know that we are in a bit of what we're calling an experience of a renaissance here in Buffalo. Molly, I'd love to hear from you to share your perspective specifically on the evolution of tech in Western New York and what you've seen.
Yeah, so I'm super proud to be from Buffalo, born and raised. Obviously, I had some time out west, but I'm back home now and loving it. But I think what's important to understand about the Buffalo tech ecosystem is it's nothing new. It's been around for a long time, and people don't necessarily give us the credit more broadly than being local and knowing it. I mean, Niagara Falls, Nikola Tesla helped design the power plant for the hydro plant that's for Niagara Falls. So it's nothing new. I think what's important to note is, and most of my time is, in the advanced manufacturing sphere. So we're doing a lot of things in the tech industry in Buffalo to not only set ourselves up for success right now, but we're integrating with, the academics locally, Northland workforce, like all of those things to help set ourselves up for the future. So 43 North, right? Bringing in new tech startups into the Buffalo area and setting ourselves up for not only a current tech ecosystem, but like long-term endurance.
Very well said.
Well said. And I think the other thing that is unique about Western New York, we've heard more, I think you hit on this a little bit, the world's largest living room, right? Yeah. Lots of connectivity, which has pluses and minuses. So I want to pose this next question, and actually, LaToya and Courtney, I'm going to pose it to you both because of how long you've been in Buffalo and kind of your unique vantage points. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to understand, what unique professional opportunities do you feel like you've been afforded in Western New York because of the uniqueness that is Western New York? And Courtney, I think it's interesting with your perspective here a couple months, and LaToya with your experience here longer in Western New York. So LaToya, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, I very early on in my career had a privilege of having a woman director, and I also had a manager underneath her, that really invested in me. And helped me kickstart my career off. I mean, very grateful for those opportunities. And from from the Microsoft training to whatever training I need to fulfill and help upskill or help build up my career, totally invested in me. And I think if I had not had a woman leader, I might not have had those opportunities. And then that drive, like that building of that drive and having that community with me along the way to help me become more curious and help me build up that confidence in tech. I think I might not have had those same opportunities if I were in another larger city. And I just think because Buffalo has that kind of homegrown community that I was able to blossom in my career.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Courtney, you've been here for a few months and you've made
December
Buffalo
30th. That's right. Like I said, I keep coming back. Buffalo feels like home now. So for me, it's all about the access. Like when we landed here in Buffalo, everybody was so welcoming. Like my husband likes to say, yeah, the weather is cold, but the people are really warm. And that's very true. The access to resources. So if I want to learn a new tech, jargon, right? I can ask someone, and as Maura and I were talking earlier, it's like 2 degrees of separation here in Buffalo. Somebody knows somebody who can help you attain what that goal is that you're trying to hit. But I also love the fact that in Buffalo, I feel like I get to live like a very full life. And what I mean by that is when I think about multidimensional living, and I'm reading this book now with my therapist called What Happy People Know by Dr. Baker, I believe it is. And in it talks about how, the whole work-life balance, the whole, where do you go to find mentors in your community? There's an aspect to living that is very much integrated. So think about, your relationships, with your peers, with your coworkers, with your family members, with your loved ones. Think about your health. How can you get out and move your body? How can you make sure that you're showing up as your best self every day? And then your purpose, like what is that you love to do? And I feel like Buffalo is one of those very unique places where we got to land and I can live a truly multi-dimensional life and live it to its fullest. And you can't do that in a lot of different places.
Yeah, I want to pull on something you said there too, talking about jargon.
Yeah.
And I think we saw some of that up there in the feedback that we got from the audience too about some of the obstacles, right? Mm-hmm. So Renita, I'm curious from your perspective, when we talk about tech and jargon and things feeling unapproachable, if someone is intimidated by the concept of stepping into a tech-aligned career, like what would you tell them knowing what you know now?
So when I first started, I remember like in my first days at my official job in technology, I remember sharing with a colleague who was showing me how to do something that I was, a little bit intimidated by the technical savvy that was in the room. And I shared, I'm afraid to fail. You guys are so technical. And he said something to me, which sticks with me to this day, which is, if you fail, I failed. And I've carried that throughout my career to give back, to show people, that, there's no such thing as a silly question. Again, the technical jargon is, it's DNS and DHCP and all the letters, right? And it goes on and on, like 17 times the alphabet, right? But if somebody asks me a question about what did you just say, and I feel like it's my responsibility to give back to the community, to give back to my brothers and sisters in tech who are just trying to figure it out, to stop, take a moment, explain, teach. There's a reason that you are where you are in your career, is that because somebody took the time out of their day to explain something to you, or like say, here's a book on that, or now you can Google anything. Back in the day, there wasn't even Google, so I think it was Netscape or something. I'm not sure. Yeah, something like that. I think like when I learned spreadsheets, it started with a backslash something in Lotus Notes. That's a ways back. So it's a little bit easier now to kind of self-teach, but there's nothing better than having somebody sit down and and explain something to you. That same colleague, I used to say, I'd go and I'd learn something, and then I'd come back and I'd say, hey, let me show you something, and I'd show them basically what they taught me. I'd show it back to them. And so he started calling me Missouri, which is the show me state, right? So I would say, hey, how do I do this? And he'd say, come here, Missouri, let me show you something. So again, that's my advice to this crowd is, as you go through your career, you might be, where you want to be, and things, share them. Pay attention, because people will sit there kind of scratching their head, right? And that's their sign to say, hey, do you want me to show you something? You want me to explain that to you?
Yeah, I bet we could all think of an example where someone took the extra time and that changed the way we approached a problem, made something seem less intimidating or more approachable. And Renita, I know you and I have talked about how that is a source of motivation for you when you think about your career and wanting to give back. And what's so interesting is motivation is so unique to each of us. But we seek it, right, in our career, and that's the ultimate pinnacle, that motivation plus passion plus career in making something meaningful on this journey. So we actually want to hear from each of you about the topic of motivation. So we're going to do it one more time. Get out your phones. Get them out. Scan the QR code that you've got up here, or go to menti.com, MENTI.com, and use that code 32491237. And the question that you're going to see is, describe what motivates you in one word. So again, menti.com, or scan that QR code up there and share with us one word, what motivates you. And we'll take a moment here. And Renita, I know one of the things that we talked about too is how important it is to find your source of motivation and how that's different for everyone. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure. What I found is that motivation, it comes from within. Like, I can't motivate Sarah to do something that she's not motivated to do. But the tricky part is finding out what that is. And for me, motivation for me is creativity. I have, a personality that is, I tend to lean toward solutions that are bold, things that have never been done before. I like to take kind of a mess and untangle the wires and then hand it back and say, look what I made you. And, present somebody with a bright, shiny thing. And so that's different for everyone, but that's my motivation, is doing the impossible, doing things that people have told me that, that can't be done. Man, that's so powerful for me, is proving them wrong, but also, not taking no for an answer, which is, it's highly motivating for me. And that's true, I think, for everyone in the room. If you've ever played a video game, it's the leveling up. It's the saving the princess, thing. It's getting all the points and the coins and all that kind of stuff. We're crossing the finish line in a marathon. I think everyone has that sort of motivation within them. But for me, it took a long time to figure out what that was. But my advice is listen to your gut. Your instincts are going to tell you the things that you're drawn toward, the things that you organically feel good doing. But I would recommend at some point in your career that you find some sort of something like, I have a book, Strengths Finder 2.0. Find out what your strengths are. Find out what the things that, that motivate you. For me, it was something called a DISC profile. And man, it just nailed it for me. I really, really do tend to lean towards, achieving the impossible. And it can be a strength and it can be a weakness as well, because some people are like, stop, we can't do anymore. But so I have to temper it. I know that about myself. But it also drives me to do things that have never been done before, like becoming the first Native American woman to become a CIO. I wasn't trying to do that. Thank you. I wasn't trying to do that. I was just trying to be a really awesome Renita, and that just happened along the way. And, I had an opportunity one time to sit with the amazing Hank Aaron at dinner. And he told me the story about his journey to the record, the home run record, right? Something he didn't even want it, right? But one of the things that he told me, and I have a signed autographed ball that he gave me, was he said, keep on swinging. Right. And that's one thing that I would encourage everyone in the room is to remember, is that you're going to fail. You're going to trip. Just keep your legs moving. Just keep going. And like I said, in the great words of Hank Aaron, just keep on swinging.
I love that.
While you've been sharing that wonderful answer with us, we have this amazing word cloud behind us. So I just want to give the panelists a moment to take a look at the responses that we have here. Learning, growth, change, challenge, success, community, collaboration, freedom, creativity, recognition, challenges. I mean, this is a beautiful list. And I just want to invite the panel, take a look at this. What do you think? What resonates with you?
Tacos.
Tacos.
My right there. Solving hard problems. Yeah, I think the challenge is, one of the most fun parts for me that keeps me engaged and, challenged and active on a daily basis.
I will say a lot of words on here feeds my inner agile coach, makes me feel really happy. But challenge, I share like that motivation for Nita. Like somebody telling me I can't do a thing or I'm not supposed to be there makes me want to go after it and do it better.
Yay.
Even more. It's one of the reasons why I end up like being a sand engineer at one point in my career. But like, I really like, I'm very passionate. One about community, creating community and advocating, creating spaces. And if that means that if I have to be in that space to make room for someone else, I am more than willing to do that. And I think that the more that we do that, the more it becomes normal for all of our faces and our voices to be heard. So, stop it.
Okay, so if I can take all these words and make a gumbo, because that's what we do in Texas.
That's what you do.
I'm going to say my one word would be actually like legacy, right? So I think about what my husband and I get to do every day, like the fact that we get to do it together and we get to serve. We have the great privilege and honor of serving an industry that has fed our family for nearly 3 decades. And so it's important that, we leave our mark on this industry, yes, but we are truly helping people redefine what it means to work as an independent stylist, as a nail technician, as a massage therapist, having a salon owner, a barbershop owner. And we are the second largest industry for independent contractors and freelancers. And but software doesn't really focus on us. And so, definitely legacy. We are going to be loud and proud with what we leave at Share. Yeah.
One more question before we open it up to the audience. I've heard almost all of you in some way, shape, or form talk about being the only woman in the room, being the only woman of color in the room, and also how motivates you, what can motivate you in some instances is having someone tell you no and knowing that it is up to you to showcase that that no is not true. So just share with the audience, I'm opening this up to the panel, share with the audience, how have you navigated the experience of being the only woman in the room? And if you could share something that you wish someone had told you in the beginning when you started your journey, what would that advice be?
Renita, you want to kick us off?
Gosh, I've gotten a lot of great advice along the way. I shared a little bit, just to keep on swinging. But maybe I'm going to answer the bias question now. So, and I'm going to need to use my cheat sheet here. And I typically don't do this. I don't like to use, cards for these kinds of events, but I wanted to make sure I get this right. This is from the Harvard Business Review. Men will apply for a job, and it's a little bit dated, but I think it's still somewhat true.
It's still
Men
true.
will, they know where I'm going. Men will apply for a job when they meet only 60% of the qualifications. Women, in contrast, tend to apply only if they meet 100%. I see a lot of nods. 100% of the requirements. That's internal bias.
Yeah.
That's within ourselves, right? And that's something that we own, and it's also something we can change. Yeah. So I guess my best advice is, close your eyes and just go. Take a leap of faith. Stop caring what other people think about you and believe in yourself.
And don't worry, we're not going to go down the line quite yet. Look at the audience, but anyone else want to address that question?
Yeah, I have a topic on that one. So I think for me, it's actually a criticism that I had received very early on in my career. And I think it has helped kind of develop who I've become. So it's worth sharing for everybody. So early on in my career, I had gotten the feedback that my personality didn't fit the mold of an engineer. And I'm pretty loud, pretty silly, kind of outgoing, when I'm in the office because I'm going to come over and say hi. And maybe that doesn't fit the mold. But, for a very long time for me, that hurt. And it was something that, I was actively trying to change. And it took me a while to recognize that, that is what makes me special. And that is what, our differences are the things that we should celebrate because that's what makes a team whole, as opposed to saying, well, that's something that, you don't fit the mold. I think we're here today and, we're all actively trying to break that mold and make, the next generation not have to go through some of those things that we did.
True. Can I add?
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that story.
One of our investors, Arlen Hamilton of Backstage Capital, says this, and I will never forget it. Every time I hear her say it, I'm like, yes. She says, you have to be uniquely you so that the people who are looking for you can find you. I'm going to say it again. You have to be uniquely you, quirky engineer, right? Data nerd, so that the people who are looking for you can find you. I wish that 20 years prior, wish someone 20 years ago would have told me this. And I think it'll help a lot of, especially the younger women in the room, is that our brains don't know the difference between a truth and a lie. And so whatever we tell ourselves in the morning when we get up before we get dressed for work, our entire body responds to what we just told ourselves. So if we said, I'm not ready to apply for that job, right, Renita? Or I'm not a part of this community because I'm not seen in the room. Every cell in your body responds that way. So just remind yourself, speak truth, speak love, and speak life every single morning.
Uniquely you. That's wonderful advice.
Yeah.
All right, and speaking of that advice, it is now time for you to unwrap, if you haven't yet, uncrinkle those snowballs, because we're going to ask the audience, as I transition up here, to share some of that great advice you're reading in those snowballs. So I'm going to we have a mic snowball that we're going to share.
Are they going to throw them at you?
I'm on. Oh. don't know. Maybe they are going to throw them at me. All right. So hopefully we have a brave soul in the audience who's willing to share either advice that you've received or compelling advice within those snowballs that you want to share with the group here tonight, the community gathered here tonight. What are you reading? All right. Yes, over here.
Mine says purpose and pen, path and pencil, which I thought was
Purpose and pen.
Oh.
Path and pencil. Oh, I like that.
right. Purpose and pen, so it's concrete.
Yeah.
Your path is a pencil, so it's
Yeah.
always going to change.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah.
Purpose in pen, path in pencil. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. All right. What else? Yes. Compare yourself to not where you want to be, but to how far you have come. Sorry, my grammar. That's also a great sentiment. I'll invite the panel. What's jumping out to you on this first two pieces of advice?
Probably the best advice I've ever gotten was from somebody who didn't hold an Ivy League degree. It was my grandmother. And she said the difference between a goal and a dream is a plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I like the path and pencil advice there, which is your path is going to change. I had no idea that I was going to be in technology until I put my hands on the keyboard, right? So that's again has carried me far in my career. Is the difference between a goal and a dream is a plan.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. What else do we have out there? Okay, we'll stick on this side of the room.
So mine is just very simple, but it's very simple, and it's almost like an affirmation. Just be you.
Yeah.
So we've talked about uniqueness,
Mm-hmm.
just being able to be your authentic self, coming to the board. And 20 years ago, I was in this building, and I will tell you that mentality was definitely not available.
That's true.
It all was too.
But you're back.
I know they're like, oh, I would never dare if anyone would say you're an authentic self. Now, to be me is to be a mom, to be an advocate for children with disabilities, and just really purge forward, not only for diversity, but for women, but really walk in your unique self.
Yes.
We all bring something to the table. I think I tossed it out there, and I hope somebody shows it. But someone once told me that changed my life was a closed mouth to bring that back in. And that advocacy has to start with you.
Yep.
So I'm glad that somebody just asked for to just be me.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Just be you, be uniquely you. That's wonderful. What else? I saw a few more hands up there. This is really great. Yes, please, in the back.
So if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The greatest experience of my life has been being able to collaborate with people and what you learn from them and the passion and really speaking back to me. Where my path has taken a large divergence from what I originally wanted. But I'm so happy now to be excited about challenges and particular needs and opportunities that are presented because of networking and having that community and seeing the diversity of people first is amazing. And to the part with jargon, P-tip, I onboard a lot of people in DC and that's part of my welcome packet that I instituted, which is me being forceful about it, is I created an acronym glossary that goes with welcome packets for the employees. And it's a living list on whatever living document system that you have to make sure that as new things present themselves, it's available for employees to use that moving forward. So that helps embrace that welcome portion. You deserve to be here.
Yeah.
Here is an asset for you to help connect with the door that you are walking through.
Thank you for sharing. Yes, please.
Oh, I'm the other half of Chip. But if I would have wrote it down, I would have intercepted my own paper. Founders and future founders and I share this in all my classes, is that 97% of people will never change. 2% will think about it, only 1% will.
Yeah.
So I say it to people because if you're part of the 2% who's going to think about the support you have. So if you share something and somebody doubts you, do not dismiss the person. Just limit your communication. So you have to know who supports you in order to feel it.
Yeah.
All right, let's take two more right in the back. I think I see a piece of paper.
I love the one that I have. It says find a mentor. It is during your career path, if you do not have a mentor, you find yourself making faux pas that could cost you on your journey to where you're trying to arrive.
Mm-hmm.
The mentor will serve as a person to remind you of the things that you should or should not do, or to advise you of a better way of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't find mentors through our career path, then we find ourselves short and not achieving the goal in the time frame in which we want, but a little later on in life. I stand as your example.
Thank you for sharing. And I know mentorship and that idea of giving back, because we've all had mentors, is something this group feels very passionately about. Maura, Courtney, I'd invite any experience around mentorship that you would like to share. Latoya, Molly, Renita?
I guess sometimes mentors too, like, are going to push you into sort of like uncomfortable situations, or like I think of a woman I worked for, it's now defunct, but Amex Publishing, so the publishing arm back when magazines were a thing, of American Express, and she had come from Edelman, which is one of like the top PR agencies, and I remember I was a coordinator, and I really wanted to move up, and it was, you know, a very corporate atmosphere, and the managers who were above me weren't leaving, and I was applying for other jobs, and I remember saying to my mom, I was really like surprised and kind of disappointed she didn't fight for me to stay. And my mom said to me, she was like, actually, she's doing you a favor. She's being, you know, a mentor, because she's pushing you sort of out of the nest. Like, you're not going to keep developing if you just sort of stay there where it's safe. And she, you know, congratulated me and, you know, was a reference like moving forward. But like, I kind of look at that as this like pivotal career point that I was able to get a job that was, you know, just so much more senior and better salary, and, you know, living in New York, that was important. But she really, you know, pushed me, and I took that as a slight at the time. But in looking back, it was a really important, like, you know, part for her to do, and big of her too, because she had to train someone new. So.
Accelerating your growth. Absolutely. Yeah. All right, one more before we open it up to questions. Yes.
A great piece of advice that I had gotten, and this is for founders, and it really dovetails with what you said and you as well, is fail fast.
Oh, yeah.
If you are going to fail, don't, I think we have a tendency to hold on for dear life and, oh, if I just do this, if I just do this. And I think it goes back to your mentors. You can work with them and say, you know what, I don't feel like this is working. And draw in all of your resources and use them to help you determine, do I just say, okay, learn from this and move on. So if you are going to fail fast.
I will have to say, once again, the agile culture me gets all happy when you guys talk about failing fast, community, psychological safety, pairing, sharing, knowledge sharing. All of this is great. It's really great. Emotional quotient. And I also would like to say my mentor is in the audience today. So mentors are definitely important. Juliet, say hi.
Hi.
And I'll just add just a couple of remarks is that mentors can present in unlikely ways.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And it doesn't have to be somebody above you on the org chart that is can be a really, really good mentor for you. And just in my experience trying to help others, how much I've learned in that process from others has been probably the most rewarding part of the giving back, is it bounces back. So again, just don't forget that mentors and leaders exist in unlikely places.
Yep. And to your point on that, like I definitely prefer in-person, right, mentorship. But I think we probably discount a lot about podcasts and books and not reality TV shows, but it's something in a digital form. There's somebody who you esteem, and you say, okay, I like how she or he kind of navigated their role, their life, their accomplishments. Find out what podcast they've been interviewed on. Read that book that they created. And that way you kind of get an indirect mentorship.
That is. Becoming by Michelle Obama was great.
Oh, that was so good.
That was good.
Yeah.
This was really powerful to hear the advice that had been tossed around earlier this evening in the form of a snowball. So I appreciate you all sharing. I am conscious of time, and I only say that because I want to make sure we open it up to questions and answers, Q&A, and continued dialogue. So I'd love to hear from you all in the audience. That was great advice, but what questions do you have for this group of panelists here, or what conversation do you want to engage in? And where is that mic? If we've got it. Okay. All right. So I see a hand over there. Get my cardio ready. Thank you.
So my question is for Mara, I think you're going to say. So I have a degree in English as well, and I had no idea where to pivot. Like, I love to write, and I love to just be involved with words, because language was really, really interesting to me. And I focused on linguistics and all of that. And I was like, how did you utilize your English education working in the tech company now?
Yeah, so I think sometimes I think of myself a little bit as like a translator. I'm not quite a product marketing manager, but I kind of tell the stories. I'm supposed to go find the stories that are interesting, that you'd find interesting, that the media might find interesting. And so it's oftentimes working with a lot of different departments and then repeating it back to them. Like, okay, so this is how the machine learning model works. And it's cool because, and then getting rid of the jargon and, making it very plain speaking. So I would just say making it understandable, making an interesting story, like a story that you could go to a cocktail party and say oh my God, my friend John is doing the coolest stuff. Here's what he's doing. But you would be able to understand it, over a glass of wine and, an appetizer. So I guess then that translates to more formal things like a press release, or even in the company, there's internal communications. How does your nail technician in Dallas understand what she's doing, how it ladders up to the vision of ShearShare, and those emails, those Zoom calls, even talking points that aren't even full sentences, but you need to nail trust, transparency, and innovation. And so being able to use language to sort of encapsulate that story in a really succinct way is super powerful, and something that these other teammates might not have a strength in. They're inventing all the stuff. You get to go talk about it and write about it.
All right, I see another question in the back.
It's true.
So here's my question. When I look at women in tech and in any other industry, there's a time in your life during your career path where you have experienced failure. And I'm a strong believer that failure leads to success. What I would be interested in finding out is, where on your journey have you failed, and how did it make you feel, and what lesson did you learn from it? And then the second part of that is integrity. Has your integrity been challenged where you've had to defend your integrity?
Okay, come with the questions. Okay, who wants to jump in here?
I'll go on the failure question. I'm not afraid of that. No, so my road to becoming the chief information officer, I was actually passed over 3 times for the role, and I was asked to do something to spend my time or focus my time on information security, and that's how I overcame the failure, if you will. Was I dug in because information security is super geeky, deep technical in the packets, right? Down in the weeds, technology. So it forced me to become even more technical than I had before. And I, use that to kind of demonstrate my technical chops, right? Because you can't be an infosec unless you are deep in the packets. So I used it as a communication channel, if you will, to kind of prove myself and my technical chops. So, that's just one way that I was able to, I don't want to say overcome, because eventually I became the CIO. Eventually I claimed the job, and I just didn't ask for it. I just claimed it and said, this is mine. But it gave me the courage and the credibility to be able to do that.
How about to the second part of her question, dealing with a
Integrity?
situation when your integrity has been challenged?
Yeah, I think about startup founders. You go out and you fundraise, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes you hear about other companies who may be competitors or may be adjacent to what you're trying to do or the problem that you're trying to solve, and the amounts of money that they raise or what their vanity metrics are. Mm-hmm. And so it can be really easy for you to add a 0 on a pitch deck talking to an investor, like, oh yes, we're in 9,000 cities instead of 900 cities, because who's going to go back and count 9,000 or even 900 cities, right? But you hear that, unfortunately, more often than not. And so it's very easy to, go along to get along to go along. But we completely stand by, what we do at ShareShare every single day, because the way we built our company is the way we built our family. And I feel that, our marriage was our first startup. And that was the best merger of all time. And then our son, who's a second-year cadet and football player at the Air Force Academy, he's our second startup, and he's been acquired. And so now you have, and so it's just our third baby. And so you have to be really careful about, how you, again, present out to the world. Like, we would never want that kind of reputation to follow the Caldwells or to follow anyone on the ShareShare team. And so every day we go into the office fighting hard for the people that we get to serve every single day, but doing it with integrity, without question. Mm-hmm. Go, girl.
I think we probably have time for 1 or 2 more questions. Anyone else in the audience? All right, you one up here in front. And actually, you're close enough that if you project, I'll echo it back. Yes.
Yes.
Hey.
So you talked a little bit about your exuberance and personality. And did you find yourself editing yourself during your career? And maybe you could talk a little bit about when did you stop?
Yeah. So the question there, just in case folks in the back didn't hear it, although I think you projected very well, have you found yourself editing? And when did you stop, if you were?
Yeah, for sure. I think for a long time. So that was, very early on in my career, before I was actually in the professional workforce, still in college. And, I expected that that's what professionalism was. And so first job out of college, okay, straight lace, don't be the talkative one in the office, no chit chat, straight to the business, right? Second role, I took a leadership role, and I was like, well, I need to put on this front for my team, and I need to be professional, and I need to, hold the line of what this business needs. And I think, honestly, it was, I came to find myself, and I don't want to say it was at Tesla, but Tesla has been a great environment for me where I don't, edit myself anymore. I'm very open. I'm very passionate. I'm emotional. And I've found that has been one of my greatest personal successes, was feeling able and comfortable to get to that point where I don't feel like I need to hide. I don't feel like I need to tone myself down or be careful and tiptoe around the conversation. I will come right at you and I will tell you what's business. And then we'll have a chat in the office later and I'll laugh. And you know what I mean? And I'm bubbly and funny and silly. But I think everybody finds that point at a different, part of their career. Maybe some folks don't come to that realization until a little bit later, or maybe some folks know it right off the bat. But for me, it was kind of just finding that comfort. And as I developed as a professional and as a leader, feeling comfortable in my own shoes and knowing what I know to be my truths.
Very nice.
Well, I edit myself all the time. I edit myself mostly because of the perceptions that go around women, especially Black women, when it comes to being the angry Black woman. And so I have to be very careful in guiding my expressions, how exuberant. That does not go away. Unfortunately, in my role or in the space that I occupy, and as much as I advocate for diversity, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in that space. What I have done is, instead of editing, which I used to do, is try to make the conversation more inclusive in using things like problem statements, how might we, or trying to address it in a different way, using different language tools in my toolkit now to address that. But I very much edit myself a lot. The term code switching is a definite thing, and that happens a lot, and it can be very exhausting. Yes. So if you see, especially Black women, and they look like they have not a lot of energy at that moment, that is probably why. Just extend some empathy towards us, and and just be supportive.
And to hop on that too, sorry, I think what is different for men and women in tech and in the workforce in general is a man who is strong and confident and loud, maybe, is seen to be confident and, sure of themselves. A woman is seen to be emotional and questioned. You know what I mean? Like, oh, she's just going overboard. But I think, that is some of the editing. That still does happen naturally, but the passion and emotion versus confidence is a big divide that I think still does exist.
I see a lot of shaking heads in the audience, so I know that commentary is resonating with folks. I would love to keep the conversation going all night. And I will say that we have more opportunity for networking and community building and sharing with each other in the lobby after this session ends. But unfortunately, we are coming to an end. We're a little bit over time, but I think, the momentum here tonight, the conversation, the energy has been so great. So I have a final question for the group of panelists here. And I want to understand in one word, if there's one word you want to leave this wonderful audience with tonight, what is that single word?
Responsibility. I learned something about the responsibility process, and it's something that we go through. There are 5 different stages that we go through when we're trying to make a decision. And it goes all the way from shame and guilt all the way up to responsibility. And you show up for yourself every time and take responsibility for the space that you hold, how you behave in the world, the opportunities that you take, your time, your interactions, your community. And if anything that you would take away from anything that we said is responsibility. We all hold a responsibility for each other and how we move and act and share this space in this world that we belong in.
Well said.
I would say ownership. Own your destiny. Sometimes things may not feel like they fall into place right off the bat. But don't stop trying. And take every opportunity that comes to you, because the first opportunity that comes, you may think, oh, that's not necessarily me, and I'm not really interested in that, but it could turn into something incredible and open doors for you that you don't necessarily expect.
Yeah, good. My one word would be jump and grow your wings on the way down.
Well said.
Mine would be value yourself, your experiences, and the person on the other side of the table.
One word. Bravery. Just be brave.
Well said. Well said.
All right, a few notes before we formally wrap up here. So, as I mentioned before, the party, the networking event, whatever we want to call this, I think party, continues out in the lobby after we end here. And I also want to say that if you have won one of our fabulous prizes this weekend, and thank you to those who donated prizes this evening, you can pick it up at the registration desk. Also, when you do make your way out, please don't forget some really exciting swag bags that we have for you that celebrate the Women in Tech event that we have this evening. And before we wrap, I would like to sincerely thank each of our panelists this evening. Let's give it up for them. Thank you. Also, to the teams at Invest Buffalo Niagara, Forge, TechBuffalo, M&T Tech up there in the booth, the staff on site here tonight at Seneca One, Kristen from Meet and Eat, all of you, thank you. This was definitely a team effort. So let's put it together for the hands together for the teams. But most importantly, I want to thank each of you, our audience here this evening. Thank you for coming out tonight. We had no idea what type of reception we would get when we put this event together, and you have been wonderful as an audience here today. The energy has been great, the conversations compelling, the questions and the thoughtfulness from the panelists and the audience. It's rare to get this type of combination in an event. So I want to thank each of you, and I hope you walk away from this evening feeling empowered, feeling inspired, understanding the power of innovation for women and tech and those who support us. And we will be coming back to each of you with the question of how do we keep this momentum and energy going together in Buffalo, in Western New York. So give it up for yourselves. Thank you so much for your time this evening. And we will see you in the lobby. All right, have a great night.